Okay, I have to be completely honest with you before we even really get started today.
Oh boy. Honesty right out of the gate.
Yeah, well, when I first opened the source material for today's deep dive,
Hmm.
this text called The Interior Life, I was um I was a little skeptical.
Skeptical how?
Well, it promises this grand convergence of ancient and modern wisdom, which, let's be real, is usually just code for throwing a bunch of random inspirational quotes into a blender.
And hoping it tastes like a smoothie.
Exactly. And just hoping it makes sense. And the lineup of people we are talking about today is genuinely wild.
It's a very disjointed dinner party, for sure.
Disjointed is putting it mildly. I mean, we're looking at Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher. Then we have Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. And then out of nowhere,
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld and Mr. Rogers show up.
It does feel like the setup for a really strange joke.
Right. Like an emperor, a comedian, and a children's TV host walk into a bar.
But honestly, that bizarre mix of characters is actually the core strength of the argument here.
Okay, lay it out for us.
The source material is making a very specific point. Despite all these people living in completely different eras, under different economies, and having wildly different personalities, they are all pulling on the exact same thread.
And that thread is what the text calls the interior life.
Exactly. But we really need to define that carefully right up front.
Because it sounds a bit, I don't know, ooh.
Yeah, or people hear interior life and they immediately think of retreating. You know, they picture monks hiding in the mountains away from society.
Running away from their problems.
Right. But the mission of this deep dive and the argument of the text is the exact opposite. It argues that the outer life, the jobs you do, the traffic you sit in, the relationships you manage, is inherently chaotic.
That is definitely true.
So the only way to survive that external chaos without losing your mind is to build an internal structure first.
So it's not an escape hatch at all.
It's a fortress.
Yes, it is a fortress. And crucially, it's a fortress that you take with you wherever you go, which leads perfectly into the first major concept in the research.
The portable monastery. The portable monastery.
Which, I'll admit, sounds like a really niche camping accessory.
A tent with a built-in meditation cushion.
Exactly.
Well,
But I'm assuming it's actually a cognitive tool.
it is. It starts with Lao Tzu. He wrote, "Correct your mind and the rest of your life will fall into place."
Okay, see, that sounds lovely on a bumper sticker.
Nah.
But the actual mechanics of doing that seem impossible.
It's incredibly difficult because it requires a fundamental shift in how you view the world around you.
Well, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's say I'm stuck in gridlock traffic. I'm late for a massive meeting. I am furious. Telling me to just correct my mind feels like a total cop-out.
It feels like toxic positivity.
Yeah, it feels like I'm just supposed to pretend everything is fine when it's clearly not.
That is a very valid pushback, but the source links this directly to the Stoic view, specifically Marcus Aurelius. He has this brilliant, almost cold reality check about inanimate objects.
Okay, what does the Roman emperor have to say about my traffic jam?
He essentially reminds himself that external circumstances are not sentient.
Meaning they don't have feelings.
Right. The traffic is not a person with an agenda. The rainstorm is not out to get you. That computer that freezes right before you save your document is not plotting your downfall.
Even though it really feels like it is.
It does. But when you get angry at those things, you are anthropomorphizing them. You are treating a line of cars like it has agency and malice.
Oh, wow. So Marcus Aurelius is basically saying these things just simply are.
Exactly. They cannot respond to your rage. Screaming at your steering wheel is literally just screaming at a piece of plastic and leather.
It doesn't hurt the steering wheel's feelings.
Not at all. It only degrades your own peace. So the portable monastery isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about using logic to realize that the world is completely indifferent to your outbursts.
That is oddly comforting.
There's a great parable from Anthony de Mello in the text that illustrates this perfectly. A disciple comes to his master and says, "I have no cell to go to. I am no monk. I can't find peace."
Because he doesn't have the physical room.
Right. And the master just looks at him and says, "Look within."
Your cell is inside you.
Precisely. And history backs this up entirely. We have this idea that philosophy requires a quiet library or a mountaintop. But Zeno taught his philosophy on a painted porch, the Stoa, right in the middle of a loud, busy marketplace.
Plato taught outside under the olive trees.
And Aristotle taught his students while walking around the public grounds. You don't need a temple to find wisdom. You just need a shift in your attention.
So wisdom is accessible anywhere, as long as you're paying attention. But I want to pivot here because the text moves from where we find this peace to what actually gives us value.
This is a huge transition.
It is. Because even if I am totally calm inside my little portable monastery, I still live in the real world. I still have to pay rent. I live in an economy that judges me almost entirely by what I earn and what I produce.
That is the default setting of modern life. You are your output.
Exactly. But the source material throws a massive wrench into that way of thinking. It argues that your value is entirely unearned.
And this is where we get that incredible crossover event you mentioned earlier. Plutarch meets Mr. Rogers.
It sounds absurd on its face, but walk us through the connection there.
Let's start with Plutarch, the ancient Greek historian. He wrote that we need to teach children that their true value isn't gold worn on the body, but rather gold intermixed into the soul.
Meaning it's internal.
Yes. He viewed virtue and human worth as something you possess by nature. It's not something you go out and acquire. It's already there.
And then, thousands of years later, you have Fred Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Right. And I think a lot of adults tend to dismiss him as just kid stuff, just nostalgia. But think about how he ended every single episode of his show. He would look right at the camera and say, "There is no person in the whole world like you, and you are liked just the way you are."
If you really pause and think about the philosophical weight of that statement, it is staggering.
Because he isn't attaching a condition to it.
Exactly. He isn't saying you are liked because you got an A on your math test, or you're liked because you cleaned your room.
Or because you closed a big sales deal.
Right. He is stating that your value is an axiom. It's a given. It exists simply because you exist.
I love that. But let me push back again, because my brain immediately goes to the danger of that mindset.
The fear of complacency.
Yes. If I truly believe that I am perfect and fully valuable just the way I am, right, sitting here, why would I ever try to achieve anything? Why wouldn't I just sit on the couch and eat potato chips all day?
It's a very common fear. But the source argues the exact opposite actually happens.
Really? How so?
When you aren't desperately trying to earn your basic right to exist, you are actually free to do much better work.
Because you aren't operating out of panic.
Precisely. You aren't paralyzed by the constant fear of being unworthy. And this inherent sense of value completely changes your relationship with material possessions, too.
Okay, this brings us to Jerry Seinfeld. The text talks about his massive Porsche collection.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, the guy has unimaginable wealth.
He absolutely does. He has an airplane hangar full of priceless cars.
So how does a guy with 50 Porsches fit into a lesson about not caring about material things?
Well, the text cites an interview where Seinfeld is asked what would happen if he lost it all, if the cars were just gone. And he says he's totally fine with his wife just liquidating the entire collection the second he dies. He actually compares holding onto his possessions to blowing on a dandelion.
I was really struck by that image in the source. Can we unpack the dandelion mindset? Because usually if I own a vintage Porsche, I want to grip onto that Porsche for dear life.
Think about the actual mechanics of finding a dandelion gone to seed. You pick it up, you admire the symmetry of it. It's this beautiful, fragile little geometric thing.
Right.
You enjoy it for a moment. Then you take a breath, you blow the seeds into the wind, and they are just gone.
And you don't drop to your knees and cry about the seeds flying away.
Exactly. You do not grieve the dandelion.
Oh.
Because the joy was in the brief interaction with it, not in retaining it forever. Seinfeld is applying that exact same logic to millions of dollars worth of cars. Enjoy them, drive them, appreciate the brilliant engineering, but realize they are just seeds in the wind.
You don't own them forever.
Yeah.
That connects perfectly to the ancient story in the text about Epictetus and the iron lamp.
Yes, that's a classic Stoic anecdote. Epictetus comes home one day and finds that his very expensive, very beautiful iron lamp has been stolen.
And normally that ruins your entire week. You're calling the authorities, you're raging at the universe.
But Epictetus doesn't rage at all. He just assesses the situation and says, a man only loses what he has.
Wow.
He reasoned that the thief simply couldn't resist the impulse to steal, so Epictetus goes out, buys a cheap clay lamp to replace it, and just moves on with his life.
Yeah.
His identity was not bound up in the iron.
Because he already had the gold intermixed in his soul, like Plutarch said. Okay, so we have this dandelion mindset. Enjoy things, use them, but don't grip them too tightly. And realize your value is inherent.
Right.
But I want to connect this to the real world of building skills. Because if we are just letting things go into the wind and feeling inherently valuable all the time, how do we actually get good at anything hard?
How do we achieve mastery?
Right. And the source calls this section the mechanics of mastery. using Napoleon Bonaparte as the ultimate case study.
This part is fascinating because it completely debunks what we call the great man myth of history.
The idea that some people are just born touched by the gods.
Exactly. We tend to think Napoleon emerged from the womb as a fully formed military genius, like he was just a prodigy who instinctively knew how to flank an army.
But the text references the author Robert Greene, who says that is complete nonsense.
Total nonsense. Napoleon was a relentless grinder. Robert Greene points out that when Napoleon was a young lieutenant, all his peers were out drinking, going to the theater, socializing.
Doing normal young guy stuff.
Right. But Napoleon was isolating himself, doing what Greene calls an apprenticeship of double intensity.
What does a double intensity apprenticeship actually look like in practice? Is he just reading twice as many books?
It's way more than just reading. It's active simulation. He was devouring maps, historical accounts of battles, and terrain studies, but he was actively visualizing the movements in his head. He was essentially building a massive supercomputer database in his brain before computers existed.
Just running simulations night after night.
Yes. And that obsessive preparation leads to that famous French term associated with him on the battlefield, coup d'oeil,
The stroke of the eye.
the stroke of the eye. His rivals genuinely thought it was dark magic. Napoleon would ride up to a chaotic, smoky battlefield, take one look at the terrain, and instantly know exactly where to position his artillery and where to send the infantry.
They thought it was this mystical intuition.
But the source argues it wasn't magic at all. It was just lightning-fast pattern recognition. He had already fought that exact battle 1,000 times in his head during those lonely nights studying maps. So the real battle was just familiar to him.
It's not magic, it's just a database.
Exactly. And the text points out a crucial rule here, which it calls the daily law. You have to find deep pleasure in absorbing knowledge. You have to feel like you never quite have enough.
But to build that kind of database, you also have to be willing to look really stupid at first. You have
Yeah.
to be willing to fail.
You do. Which brings in that great quote the source pulls from the book The Artist's Way.
Terrible is the friend of good.
I love that line so much. You must be willing to produce terrible work in order to stumble your way toward the good work. Napoleon wasn't afraid of the terrible, clumsy phase of learning.
It's like Agnes Replier says in the text, you cannot force education on the unreasoning, but you also cannot withhold it from the receptive. You have to be receptive to being bad before you get good. But practically speaking, how do you maintain that level of discipline? Because studying maths for 5 years while everyone else is at the pub sounds incredibly exhausting.
It is exhausting, but it's about what the source calls attacking the day. There's a brilliant historical anecdote in the text about the American Civil Rights Movement that perfectly illustrates this discipline.
This is the story from 1960.
Right. There was a journalist named Richard Whalen who was working for Time magazine. He was trying to get an interview with Diane Nash and the other young student leaders of the movement.
And we have to remember, getting an interview with Time magazine in 1960 was a massive deal. That is national front-page coverage.
It was the pinnacle of media. But Whalen couldn't get them to sit down with him. They kept telling him they were too busy working, too busy organizing the sit-ins.
They were brushing off Time magazine.
Yes. Finally, they told him, look, we can squeeze you in for a meeting at 6 a.m. right before our morning strategy session.
And Whalen has this profound realization when he actually shows up at dawn.
He walks in, he looks at these college students who are already up, fully awake, and completely focused on their mission. And he just thinks to himself, they're gonna win, aren't they?
Chills.
He realized in that moment that Time magazine was just a minor distraction to them. Their internal discipline, their 6 a.m. standard, was infinitely stronger than their desire for external validation.
That is such a powerful reframing of discipline. Winners attack the day.
They don't wait for it to come to them.
But wait, this source also gives a warning right after this.
Right.
It says we shouldn't confuse discipline with toxic perfectionism. There's a line that says, to find success, set the bar low.
Now, I know that sounds like it totally contradicts the Napoleon and Diane Nash stories.
It really does. Why would I set the bar low if I'm supposed to be operating at double intensity?
Because setting the bar low is the starting mechanism. If you wait for the perfect moment to write, or the perfect mood to study those maps, or the perfect weather to go for a run, you will literally never start.
Oh, I see.
You have to lower the barrier to entry, just like Mark Twain said about writing. Write what you know. Just get the terrible first draft on paper.
So you lower the bar just to get in the door, but you keep the intensity high once you're actually in the room working.
Exactly. Start messy, refine intensely.
Okay, I want to transition to a section of the text that really surprised me. Because so far, a lot of what we've talked about, the portable monastery, the silent studying, the early mornings, it all feels very solitary.
Very isolated.
Yeah. But the source takes this fascinating detour into relationships, specifically focusing on the ancient, bitter rivalry between the Stoics and the Epicureans.
Oh, the Hatfields and McCoys of ancient philosophy.
Seriously. Because I always thought the Stoics were the tough, unfeeling guys who just endured pain, and the Epicureans were the party animals who just wanted to eat grapes and drink wine all day.
That is exactly what history wants you to think. It was literally propaganda. There was a Stoic philosopher named Diotimus who actively spread lies about the Epicureans, claiming they were gluttons and perverts.
Just ancient smear campaigns.
Totally. But the text reveals this amazing plot twist. Seneca, who is arguably one of the most famous Stoics in history, constantly quoted Epicurus in his own writings.
Why would a famous Stoic constantly quote the founder of the rival school?
Because when you actually bypass the rumors and read Epicurus, his true definition of pleasure had nothing to do with wild parties or overindulgence.
What was his definition?
He defined true pleasure as the absence of pain in the body and the absence of trouble in the soul. It was all about sober reasoning and prudence.
So wait, at their core, both the Stoics and the Epicureans basically wanted the exact same thing.
Yes, they both just wanted tranquility. They were kindred spirits who got divided by tribalism.
That is wild. And the text uses that revelation to expand into this beautiful concept of human interconnectedness, drawing on Native American wisdom.
The concept of all my relatives.
Yes. The text talks about how we need to shift our worldview from us versus them to just we and us.
It's the profound realization that the self is not an isolated island. You are fundamentally part of a massive, breathing web of relations.
But I'm looking at the source here, and there seems to be a huge tension. How do you reconcile building the Stoic inner fortress, which sounds like you're putting up huge walls, with this Native American idea of radical relatedness, which sounds like tearing all the walls down?
It's a great question, and the text offers a brilliant synthesis of the two.
How does it blend them?
It explains that you cultivate the inner fortress not to hide from the world, but so that you can actually be good for the world.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about it. If your mind is constantly chaotic, if you are always screaming at traffic, if you're terribly insecure about your unearned value, can you really be a good partner? Can you be a good parent? Can you be a good relative to the world?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Because you're too busy drowning in your own drama.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
cultivate that stoic silence and that inner calm precisely so you have the bandwidth to bring peace into your relationships. You get your own house in order so that you can actually invite people inside.
That makes so much sense. The interior life isn't about hoarding peace. It's about generating it so you can share it.
Exactly right.
Well, that leads us right into the final major segment of the deep dive. And I have to say, after all this really beautiful, high-minded philosophy about interconnected webs, the source drops the hammer on us.
It really does. It strips away all the comforting excuses.
It calls this section the reality check.
Mm.
And there is an anecdote in here about the writer Joan Didion. And this is an ancient history. This is very raw, modern pain.
It's a heartbreaking story.
Set the scene for us.
Joan Didion and her husband, John Gregory Dunn, were going through an unimaginably hard time. Their daughter was in the hospital, completely unconscious in a coma. On top of that, John's own heart health was failing badly, and his career was stalling out.
Just wave after wave of crisis.
Right. And one day, completely overgone by it all, John looks at Joan and says, "I don't think I'm up for this."
Which is a sentiment I think every single person listening to this has felt at some point in their life. I can't do this. It's too much.
Completely relatable. But it's Joan's response that is the focal point here. She didn't hug him. She didn't offer a platitude. She didn't say, "Oh, honey, it's going to be okay."
What did she say?
She just looked at him and said, "You don't get a choice."
I mean, it sounds incredibly harsh.
It sounds so cruel in the moment.
You don't get a choice. How is that supposed to be helpful to someone who is suffering?
The source argues that it is actually the most liberating thing a human being can hear because it violently cuts off the energy leak of if only.
The energy leak of if only.
Yes. Think about how much mental energy we waste wishing our circumstances were just slightly different. If only I had more money. If only the market was better. If only I wasn't sick.
We spend hours negotiating with reality.
Joan Didion is cutting a sword right through that negotiation. The circumstances are what they are. Fortune behaves however she pleases. You do not get to choose the external events of your life.
You only get to choose you.
Exactly. You only get to choose your response. which circles us all the way back to the beginning, back to Marcus Aurelius. The source quotes him saying, "In every moment of life, you should be what you ought to be."
Not what you intend to be later, when things finally calm down.
Because things might never calm down. If the world will not arrange itself around your preferences, and it absolutely will not, then you have to stop trying to manage the world. You have to start managing yourself.
That is the ultimate realization of the interior life.
Yes.
It's almost a massive relief, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just finally giving up the illusion that we have any control over the external outcome.
It is a relief. It frees up all that wasted energy so you can focus entirely on the input, on your effort, on your character, on building the fortress.
Wow. So looking back at what we've covered, we have journeyed from the inner cell of the portable monastery all the way to the interconnected web of all our relatives.
You learn that our value is inherent. It's not earned. Plutarch's gold is already inside the soul.
We don't have to go out and buy it. And we learned that Napoleon wasn't magic. He was just a nerd who built a massive mental database by attacking the day.
And being willing to look terrible before he looked great.
Right. Now, as we wrap up, the source ends with some very practical, almost shockingly simple advice on how to actually maintain this mental fortress day to day.
It brings all this high philosophy right back down to basic biology.
It really does. It says, eat well, sleep deeply, breathe, create a sequence of goodness in your daily habits.
Because it reminds us that you cannot maintain a strong interior life if you are physically running on fumes.
You can't be a calm stoic if you haven't slept in 24 hours and you're surviving on iced coffee.
Exactly. The hardware matters just as much as the software.
So true. I think the source leaves us with one final, incredibly provocative challenge. It's an old Chinese proverb that really sums up the attitude we need to take into the rest of the week.
It's a great quote. The person who says it cannot be done should not interrupt the person doing it.
Such a powerful image. And it really poses a direct question to you, the listener. As you look at the challenges in your own life, are you the one standing around talking about why it's impossible?
Or are you the one quietly putting your head down and doing the work?
A little less interruption, a little more doing. I think that's the perfect takeaway. Thank you so much for diving deep into this text with us today.
It's a great conversation.
We will leave you today with Aristotle's conclusion, which is really the starting line for everything we just discussed.
Know yourself, that is the beginning.
We'll see you next time.